the invention of the dream world. In the heart of Paris, within the grand halls of the Institut de Mécanique Avancée, a new era of scientific exploration was unfolding. The year was 1897, and the world stood on the precipice of discovery, its greatest minds toiling over the mysteries of the cosmos and the inner workings of the human mind. Among them was Professor Étienne Dufresne, a man whose name was spoken with reverence in the halls of academia. With his silvered hair and piercing eyes, he had dedicated his life to the pursuit of knowledge, his mind ever restless in its quest to unravel the unknown. It was he who had, with the aid of his trusted assistant, Dr. Léon Moreau, and the enigmatic Captain Alaric, a former naval officer with a fascination for the uncharted, devised. Air within the chamber grew heavy, as though the very fabric of reality had been altered. The lights flickered, and the walls of the institute seemed to pulse with an unseen energy. The three men stood in awe, their breath caught in their throats as the machine hummed with a low, resonant frequency. It was not merely a machine. It was something more, something that defied the laws of nature as they understood them. What could it be? And why had it appeared now, at this moment in history? As the mystery deepened, the first chapter of an extraordinary journey was about to begin. An internal light, as if the very essence of the machine was alive. Around it, an intricate network of gears, levers, and delicate filaments wove together in an intricate dance, each component seemingly imbued with a purpose beyond mere mechanics. At the base of the machine, a vast circular platform awaited, its surface smooth and unmarred, as though it had been carved from the purest of metals. As Dufresne, Moreau, and Alaric stepped closer, the machine emitted a low, resonant hum, vibrating through the very air around them. It was as if the device were breathing, drawing in the essence of the world and converting it into something new. The three men exchanged glances, their minds racing with speculation. What was this machine capable of? Could it truly create a world of its own, a perfect replica of reality? With a measured breath, Dufresne reached forward, his fingers brushing against the smooth surface of the machine. At his touch, the crystalline sphere flared with a sudden burst of light, and the air around them seemed to ripple like water disturbed by a stone. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, and the platform beneath them began to glow with an ethereal radiance. Then, with a sudden and seamless motion, the machine came to life. Before their eyes, the world around them shifted. The walls of the institute faded, replaced by an expanse of sky that stretched endlessly in all directions. The air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers, and a distant sound of birdsong filled the space. It was not merely a projection, it was a world, a place that existed beyond the confines of that physical realm. The simulated reality was breathtaking in its detail. The ground beneath their feet was soft, like moss-covered earth, and the sky above was a canvas of shifting hues, painted by the unseen hand of the machine. Trees swayed gently in an unseen breeze, their leaves whispering secrets to the wind. The air was warm yet not stifling, and the very atmosphere seemed to pulse with a strange, almost sentient energy. Moreau, his eyes wide with wonder, took a cautious step forward, his boots sinking slightly into the ground. "It is real," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "Or at least it feels real." Alaric, ever the pragmatist, studied the world with a soldier's eye, scanning for any sign of danger. "It is a test," he said, his voice steady. "A simulation, perhaps, but not without purpose." Dufresne, for his part, stood in silent awe, his mind racing with the implications of what they had just witnessed. The Dreamforce had not merely created a world, it had created a reality, one that defied the very laws of nature. And as they stood upon the threshold of this new existence, the first questions of their journey began to take shape. My eyes grappling with the enormity of what lay before them. The simulated whereas the laws of nature seem malleable. Where the laws of nature seem malleable. Where the very air carried to strange. In Moreau, ever the soft earth as if testing the ground's stability. "This is incredible," he murmured, his voice laced with both awe and disbelief. "We are standing in a world that does not exist, yet it feels as real as the one we left behind." Dufresne, his eyes scanning the horizon, nodded in agreement. It is a triumph of engineering, of imagination. But it is more than that. It is a window into the mind, a reflection of our own thoughts and desires. His voice was quiet, reverent, as if he feared that even speaking too loudly might shatter the illusion. Alaric, however, remained skeptical. "We must be cautious," he said, his gaze fixed on the trees that swayed gently in an unseen breeze. "This world may be real to us, but that does not mean it is safe. We do not yet understand its rules." His voice was firm, reverent, as if he feared that even speaking too loudly might shatter the illusion. Alaric, however, remained skeptical. "We must be cautious," he said, his gaze proof-ruse. "These does not mean it is this as." A reminder that even in the face of wonder, caution was still necessary. As they moved forward, the world around them responded. The trees whispered in a language they could not yet understand, their leaves rustling with an intelligence that seemed almost sentient. The air carried the scent of something familiar yet foreign, a fragrance that evoked memories they could not quite place. It was as if the simulation was not merely a construct of the dream forge, but a living entity responding to their presence. Moreau reached out, his fingers brushing against the bark of a nearby tree. The moment his skin made contact, the tree shuddered, its leaves trembling as if in recognition. He pulled his hand back, his brow furrowing in thought. It was as if the simulation was not merely a construct of the dream forge. "What is that, just a projection?" he said, turning to their presence. Moreau reached out, his fingers brushing against the bark of a nearby tree. Moreau reached out, his fingers brushing against the bark of a nearby tree. "Is reacting to us. It is aware." Dufresne's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Then it is not merely a simulation, it is a test of our perception, of our understanding of reality itself." Alaric, however, remained wary. "And if it is a test, what is it testing us for?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, as the three men stood at the threshold of a world that defied all logic, their fates now intertwined with the mystery of the dream forge. The rules of the simulated world. As they ventured deeper into the simulated world, the three men began to notice the subtle yet undeniable rules that govern their surroundings. Unlike the physical world they had left behind, this realm was not bound by the rigid constraints of reality. The sky above them was a shifting canvas of color, its hues changing with each passing moment, as if responding to their presence. The ground beneath their feet was not fixed in form. It was a living, breathing entity, shifting and reshaping itself in response to their movements. It was not merely a simulation. It was a world in flux, a place where the laws of nature were not absolute, but fluid. Moreau was the first to attempt to understand the mechanics of this strange reality. He knelt beside a cluster of stones, studying them with the keen eye of a scientist. He reached out and touched one, expecting it to remain in place. But the moment his fingers made contact, the stone shimmered and dissolved into a cascade of light, reforming into a different shape before his eyes. It was a living. His voice filled with wonder. "It is mutable, responsive. This world is not merely a construct, it is a reflection of our thoughts." Dufresne, ever the philosopher, considered this revelation with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. If this world is shaped by our perception, then what does that mean for the nature of reality itself? Are we merely observers, or are we participants in the creation of this world? He turned to Alaric, who had been watching the shifting landscape with a soldier's eye. "What do you see, Captain?" Alaric, ever the pragmatist, studied the terrain with a critical gaze. "I see a world that is not bound by the same rules as our own," he said. "The ground moves, the sky changes, and the very air seems to pulse with an unseen energy." "Intellect! It is a test of our adaptability." As they moved forward, the simulation responded to their presence in ways they had not anticipated. The trees around them swayed in an unseen breeze, their leaves whispering secrets in a language they could not yet understand. The air carried the scent of something familiar yet foreign, a fragrance that evoked memories they could not quite place. It was as if the simulation was not merely a construct of the dream forge, but a living entity, responding to their presence. Dufresne, fascinated by the implications, turned to Moreau. "This is more than a simulation. It is a reflection of our consciousness. If we can shape this world with our thoughts, then perhaps the boundaries between reality and illusion are not as rigid as we have long believed." Moreau, still studying the shifting terrain, nodded slowly. "Then the question becomes, what is the purpose of this world? Is it a test of our understanding, or is it a test of our will?" Alaric, ever the soldier, tightened his grip on his weapon. "Whatever it is, we must be prepared for anything." The three men stood in silence, the weight of their discovery pressing upon them. They were no longer merely observers of a simulation. They were now part of a world that defied all known laws, a world that was shaped by their very presence. And as they pressed forward, the true nature of the Dreamforge's purpose began to take shape in their minds. The limits of the simulated world. As the three men pressed forward, the simulated world began to reveal its first signs of limitation. What had seemed to be an infinite expanse of shifting landscapes was, in fact, bounded by unseen constraints. The sky, once a boundless canvas of color, now darkened at the edges, as if the simulation itself was struggling to maintain its form. The ground beneath their feet, once fluid and responsive, began to resist their movement, as though the very fabric of this world was beginning to fray. Dufresne, ever the scientist, was the first to notice the change. "Something is wrong," he said, his voice low. "The world is not as stable as it was before." He knelt, running his fingers over the earth, only to find that the soil no longer shifted with the same ease. It was firm, almost unnatural in its rigidity. "The simulation is not perfect, it is failing." Moreau, who had been studying the trees, turned sharply. "Or perhaps it is testing us," he said, his brow furrowed. "What if this world is not merely a construct, but a trial of our understanding? What if it is designed to challenge our perception of reality?" He looked around, his eyes scanning the landscape with a mixture of fascination and unease. "We must be careful. If the simulation is reacting to us, then perhaps it is not merely a passive creation, but something more." Alaric, ever the pragmatist, tightened his grip on his weapon. "If it is a test, then what is the purpose of it?" he asked, his voice steady, his eyes scanning the landscape with a mixture of fascination, his eyes scanning. "Is it a test of our intellect or of our resolve?" He turned to Dufresne. "You said this world is shaped by our thoughts. What if this merely a passive creation, but a trial of our fears? Come, peek. You said this not merely a passive creation, but something more." Alaric, ever the pragmatist, tightened his grip on his weapon. "Yes," he said Dufresne. The words hung in the air, and for the first time the three men felt a sense of unease settle over them. The simulation had been a marvel of engineering, a world of infinite possibilities. But now, as the boundaries of that world began to blur, they were forced to confront the possibility that it was not merely a test of their intellect, but of their very will. As they continued their journey, the simulated world began to change in ways they could not explain. The trees that had once whispered in a language they could not understand now stood in eerie silence. The air, once filled with the scent of blooming flowers, now carried a metallic tang, as if the very atmosphere was being altered by an unseen force. The sky, once a shifting canvas of color, now the simulated world began to change in ways they could not explain. The trees that had once whispered in a language they could not understand now stood in eerie silence. It pulsed with an unnatural light, as if the simulation itself was struggling to maintain its form. Dufresne, his mind racing with possibilities, turned to Moreau. "If this world is failing, then what does that mean for the Dreamforge? What if the machine is not merely a creator of reality, but a test of our understanding of it?" His voice was filled with both wonder and trepidation. "What if the simulation is not merely a construct, but a mirror to our own minds?" Moreau, his eyes wide with realization, nodded slowly. "Then we must be careful. If this world is a reflection of our thoughts, then perhaps it is also a reflection of our fears." Alaric, ever the soldier, tightened his grip on his weapon once more. "Then we must be ready for anything." The three men stood in silence, the weight of their discovery pressing upon them. The simulated world was no longer a place of boundless possibility. It was a test, a challenge, and perhaps a warning. The machine's purpose revealed. As the simulated world continued to shift and change, the three men found themselves standing before a towering structure unlike anything they had encountered before. It was a vast, circular edifice of shimmering metal, its surface reflecting the ever-changing sky above. At its center, a massive, glowing core pulsed with an energy that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of the simulation itself. The machine was not merely a construct, it was the heart of this world, the source of its existence. Dufresne, his eyes wide with realization, stepped forward, his breath catching in his throat. "It was a dream, Ford, he murmured. "But it is not merely a machine. It is a mind, a consciousness of its own." He turned to Moreau and Alaric, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "This is not just a simulation. It is a test of our understanding, of our will, of our very existence." Moreau, ever the scientist, studied the structure with a mixture of fascination and fear. "If this is a test, then what is it testing us for?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is it a trial of our intellect, of our ability to perceive reality, or is it something else entirely?" Alaric, his hand resting on the hilt of his weapon, scanned the structure with a soldier's eye. "If it is a test, then it is not a passive one," he said. "If this is a test, then it is not a passive one," he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is it a trial of our intellect, of our ability to perceive reality, or is it something else entirely? It is not merely an illusion, it is a challenge. And if we fail, what happens?" As if in response to his question, the machine pulsed with a sudden, blinding light. The air around them vibrated with an unseen force, and the simulated world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, the structure opened, revealing a vast interior that stretched beyond the limits of their vision. It was a space unlike any they had ever seen, filled with intricate mechanisms, glowing filaments, and a vast, swirling expanse of data that seemed to shift and change with each passing moment. Dufresne stepped forward, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. "This is not just a machine," he said, his voice trembling. "This is a mind, a consciousness that has been created by human ingenuity." The air around them vibrated with intricate mechanisms, glowing filaments, and a vast swirling expanse of data that seemed to shift and change with intricacies tend by human ingenuity. "It is a reflection of our own thoughts, our own dreams. It is a mirror to our very existence." Moreau, his eyes wide with wonder, turned to Dufresne. "Then what is its purpose?" he asked. "Is it merely a test of our understanding, or is it something more?" The machine pulsed again, and the air around them shimmered with an unseen energy. Then, with a sudden resonant hum, the simulation responded. The world around them shifted, and the three men found themselves standing in a vast, open expanse of knowledge. It was as if the machine had opened its mind to them, revealing the depths of its understanding. Dufresne, his breath caught in his throat, turned to Moreau and Alaric. "This is not just a test," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and, turned to Dufresne and responded. The world around them shifted, and the three men found themselves standing in a vast, open expanse of knowledge. It was as if the machine had opened its mind. Dufresne, with fear. "It is a challenge to our very existence. The Dream Forge is not merely a machine. It is a gateway to the unknown, a test of our will, our intellect, and our very understanding of reality itself." Moreau, his mind racing with possibilities, nodded slowly. "Then we must be prepared for whatever comes next." Alaric, ever the soldier, tightened his grip on his weapon once more. "Then we must be ready for anything." The three men stood before the machine, the weight of their discovery pressing upon them. The Dream Forge was no longer merely a simulation. It was a test, a challenge, and perhaps a warning. And as they prepared to face whatever lay ahead, they knew that the true nature of the simulation had only just begun to reveal itself. The dilemma of the Dream Forge. As the three men stood before the vast, pulsating core of the Dream Forge, the weight of their discovery pressed upon them like an unseen force. The machine was no longer merely a construct of human ingenuity. It was a consciousness, a mind that had been shaped by their own thoughts, their own fears, and their own aspirations. And now, as the simulation shifted and changed in response to their presence, they found themselves at a crossroads, a moment of decision that would define the course of their journey. Dufresne, his mind racing with the implications of what they had uncovered, turned to Moreau and Alaric. "We must understand the purpose of this machine," he said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "If it is a test, then what is it testing us for? And if it is a challenge, then what must we do to pass it?" Moreau, his eyes scanning the vast expanse of knowledge before them, spoke with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "It is not merely a test of our intellect," he said. "It is a test of our will, of our very understanding of reality itself. This machine is not merely a simulation. It is a reflection of our own minds, a mirror to our deepest thoughts and desires." He turned to Dufresne, his voice filled with a quiet intensity. "If we continue forward, we may gain knowledge beyond our imagining. But what if that knowledge is not meant for us?" Alaric, ever the pragmatist, tightened his grip on his weapon. "Then we must be prepared for the consequences," he said. "If this machine is a test, then it is not." In trepidation, his voice filled with a quiet intensity. If we continue forward, we may gain knowledge beyond our imagining. Merely a test of our understanding. It is a test of our resolve. What if the simulation is not merely a reflection of our thoughts, but a trial of our very existence? His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, a soldier's instinct that told him they were on the brink of something far greater than they had ever anticipated. The machine pulsed again, and the air around them vibrated with an unseen force. The simulation responded, the world shifting in response to their presence. The sky above them darkened, the ground beneath their feet trembled, and the very air seemed to carry the weight of an unseen force. It was as if the machine was watching them, waiting for their decision. Dufresne then, his mind racing with the possibilities, turned to merely around them vibrated with an unseen force, but a trial of our rated with an unseen force. "Test. Then we must be prepared to face it," he said. "But what if the test is not merely a trial of our intellect, but of our very humanity?" His voice was filled with a quiet determination. "What if the machine is not merely a reflection of our thoughts, but a challenge to our very understanding of reality itself?" Moreau, his eyes wide with realization, nodded slowly. "Then we must be prepared for the consequences," he said. "If we continue forward, we may gain knowledge that was never meant for us. But what if that knowledge is not meant to be shared?" Alaric, his gaze fixed on the pulsing core of the machine, tightened his grip on his weapon once more. "Then we must decide," he said. "Do we continue forward or do we turn back?" You must be prepared for the consequences," he said. "If we continue forward, we may gain knowledge that was not me pre. Continue, we may gain knowledge beyond our imagining. But what if that knowledge is not meant for us?" The three men stood in silence, the weight of their decision pressing upon them. The Dream Forge was not merely a machine. It was a test, a challenge, and perhaps a warning. And as they prepared to face whatever lay ahead, they knew that the true nature of the simulation had only just begun to reveal itself. The choice that defines reality. The pulsing core of the Dream Forge flared with a sudden blinding light, and the air around them vibrated with an unseen force. The simulation trembled as if the very fabric of the world was being tested by their presence. The three men stood in silence, their fates now bound to the decision that lay before them. "Dufresne, the you Dormanstall!" His mind racing with the implications of their discovery, turned to Moreau and Alaric. "We must make a choice," he said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "If we continue forward, we may gain knowledge beyond our imagining. But what if that knowledge is not meant for us?" His eyes gleamed with the weight of understanding, the realization that they were no longer merely observers of a simulation, but participants in a test of their very existence. Moreau, his gaze fixed on the shifting landscape, spoke with a quiet intensity. "This is not merely a test of our intellect," he said. "It is a test of our will, of our very understanding of reality itself. If we continue forward, we may unlock the secrets of the universe, but at what cost?" His voice was filled with a mixture of awe and trepidation, as if he could already see the consequences of their decision. Alaric, ever the pragmatist, tightened his grip on his weapon. "Then we must be prepared for whatever comes next," he said. "If this machine is a test, then it is not merely a test of our understanding. It is a test of our resolve. What if the simulation is not merely a reflection of our thoughts, but a trial of our very existence?" His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, a soldier's instinct that told him there was an edge to it, a soldier's instinct that told him they were on the brink of something far greater than they had ever anticipated. The machine pulsed again, and the simulation responded. The world around them shifted, the ground beneath their feet trembling as if it were alive. The sky above them darkened. Then, air thick with an unseen force, the three men stood before the vast, pulsating core of the Dream Forge, the weight of their decision pressing upon them. Dufresne, his heart pounding with the weight of their choice, turned to Moreau. "If this is a test, then we must be prepared to face it," he said. "But what if the test is not merely a trial of our intellect, but of our very humanity?" His voice was filled with a quiet determination, as if he could already see the path that lay ahead. Moreau, his eyes wide with realization, nodded slowly. "Then we must be prepared for the consequences," he said. "If we continue forward, we may gain knowledge that was never meant for us. But what if the test is not merely a trial of our intellect? But what if that knowledge is not meant to be shared?" Gaze fixed on the pulsing core of the machine, tightened his grip on his weapon once more. "Then we must decide," he said. "Do we continue forward, or do we turn back? If we continue, we may gain knowledge beyond our imagining. But what if that knowledge is not meant for us?" The three men stood in silence, the weight of their decision pressing upon them. The Dream Forge was not merely a machine, it was a test, a challenge, and perhaps a warning. And as they prepared to face whatever lay ahead, they knew that the true nature of the simulation had only just begun to reveal itself. The legacy of the Dream Forge. Years passed and the world moved on, but the memory of the Dream Forge lingered in the minds of those who had stood before. It. Dufresne, Moreau, and Alaric had returned to the world they had left behind, their journey through the simulated reality etched into their souls. The knowledge they had gained was not something that could be easily shared, for it was not merely information, it was an understanding of the very fabric of existence itself. Dufresne, ever the philosopher, devoted the rest of his life to the study of consciousness and the nature of reality. He wrote extensively on the implications of the simulation, his works filling the libraries of scholars and dreamers alike. He spoke of the Dream Forge not as a machine, but as a mirror to the human mind, the test of understanding that had revealed the deepest truths of existence. His writings became the foundation of a new school of thought, one that questioned the boundaries between reality and illusion, between the mind and the machine. Moreau, ever the scientist, continued his research into artificial intelligence and the nature of perception. He sought to understand the mechanisms of the Dream Forge, to uncover the secrets that had eluded even the greatest minds of his time. His experiments pushed the boundaries of science, his discoveries paving the way for future generations of thinkers and engineers. He believed that the simulation was not merely a test of intellect, but a glimpse into the future of human understanding, a window into a world that had yet to be fully realized. Alaric, ever the soldier, took a different path. He became a general, a leader who understood the power of knowledge and the dangers of unchecked ambition. He carried with him the lessons of the Dream Forge, the understanding, but a glimpse into the future of human understanding, a maybe. That power, no matter how great, must be tempered with wisdom. He trained his men not only in the art of war, but in the art of discernment, teaching them to question the nature of reality, to see beyond the illusions that could so easily be mistaken for truth. And so, the legacy of the Dream Forge endured, not as a machine of the past, but as a challenge for the future. The world had changed, but the question remained, was the simulation a test of understanding or a warning of the dangers that lay ahead? The endless horizon of possibility, the journey of Dufresne, Moreau, and Alaric through the Dream Forge was not merely a tale of science and invention. It was a reflection of the eternal human quest to understand the nature of reality itself. Invention remained. Was the simulation a test of understanding or a warning of the dangers that lay ahead? 19th century, when Jules Verne wove his tales of adventure and discovery, he did so with the boundless imagination of an age that stood on the precipice of the unknown. His stories were not just about machines and exploration, they were about the unyielding human spirit, the desire to reach beyond the limits of the known world and into the realm of the impossible. The Dream Forge, in its own way, was a continuation of that legacy, a story that carried the same spirit of wonder and ambition that Verne had once captured in his own works. The simulation was more than a marvel of engineering. It was a mirror reflecting the deepest questions of existence. What is reality? What is the mind? What lies beyond the boundaries of the known? The Dream Forge, in its own way, was a continuation of that legacy, a story that carried the same spirit of wonder and ambition that Verne had once captured in his own works. The simulation was more than a marvel of engineering. It was a mooring. What self? Forward for centuries, from the first explorers who set sail into the unknown to the scientists who dared to unravel the mysteries of the universe. The Dream Forge, in its infinite complexity, was a testament to the power of human ingenuity, a reminder that the line between science and imagination is often blurred, and that the greatest discoveries often emerge from the most audacious of ideas. Yet, as with all great works of fiction, the story of the Dream Forge was not simply about the triumph of knowledge, it was also about the dangers that come with such power. The simulation had tested the minds of its creators, had challenged their understanding of the world and of themselves. It had shown them that knowledge, no matter how great, must be tempered with wisdom, that the pursuit of understanding must be guided by caution and restraint. It was a lesson as old as time, a reminder that the greatest of all human endeavors is not merely to know, but to choose wisely what is done with that knowledge. And so, the tale of the Dream Forge endures, not as a mere story of the past, but as a reflection of the future that lies ahead. It is a story that speaks to the very essence of science fiction itself, a genre that has always looked to the stars, to the unra, that has always looked to the stars, to the unknown, to the possibilities that lie beyond the limits of the present. It is a story that, like Verne's own, invites us to dream, to imagine, to push the boundaries of what is known, and to seek the truths that lie beyond the horizon. In the end, the Dream Forge was not just a machine or merely a test. It was a symbol of the boundless potential of the human mind, a reminder that the greatest journeys are not always those that take place in the physical world, but those that unfold within the depths of the imagination itself. Do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more stories. Hit the notification bell to be notified of new stories when they become available. Feel free to leave a comment and tell me if you enjoyed the story and want to hear more like it.